Good morning, everybody. I'm Tom Brackett. I'm the president and CEO of the New Jersey State Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you to the fourth in a series of 5 webinars we are putting together, co-hosted by the State Chamber and New Jersey Manufacturers Insurance Group. These webinars are really focused on the key issues that small businesses are facing during this pandemic. It's no secret that you all have faced some significant challenges and some tough challenges as our economy has tried to open in fits and starts. But probably the most daunting challenge you are facing is trying to find new sources of revenue to get you back on a path of profitable growth. We have a speaker today, Rachel Klein-Pintori, and she has a roadmap to one of those sources of growth. And after Rachel completes her presentation today, we will open it up for Q&A for all of you to ask Rachel any questions that you do have. If you would like to submit a question after Rachel speaks, please do it using your chat box. Ray Zardetto of the New Jersey Chamber staff will moderate the Q&A session. I would also, again, like to thank our partner and sponsor in these series of webinars, New Jersey Manufacturers Insurance Group. They've been a great corporate partner of ours for years and one of the most outstanding corporate citizens in the state of New Jersey for decades and decades. It is my pleasure now to introduce the Manager of Loss Prevention Services at New Jersey Manufacturers Insurance Group. Jim, it's all yours.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for the nice plug for NJM. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jim Clancy, Manager of Loss Prevention Services here at NJM Insurance Group. First, let me say that NJM is proud to sponsor this fourth of 5 webinars, and they're focused on the needs of small businesses. I'd like to thank the Chamber for the opportunity to speak with you today. The Chamber and NJM have both been in existence for more than a century to serve the needs of New Jersey business customers. NJM was founded over 108 years ago by business owners for business owners to help protect employers and their employees at the workplace. As a company, we operate in a mutual fashion and exist for the sole service and benefit of our policyholders. For more than 70 years, we've been the largest writer of workers' comp insurance in New Jersey. We're also a leader in commercial auto insurance. For the better part of a century, we've only wrote those 2 lines of business, and primarily in New Jersey. However, we knew in order to stay competitive and better serve our policyholders and prospective new ones, we needed to expand our product lines and our geographic front. So if you're not aware, NJM is now a leading regional insurer, offering workers' comp in New Jersey, PA, Connecticut, Delaware, New York, and Maryland. The reason for the expansion was to accommodate our existing policyholders in the Garden State, who also had operations in neighboring states. We want to help them grow and in turn grow with them. During this expansion, NJM has remained committed to maintaining the highest levels of service, integrity, and financial stewardship. We remain true, however, to our mission to operate as a mutual for the sole service and benefit of our policyholders. Our company's long history of focusing on safety is to help business owners identify and correct workplace hazards before accidents occur. If an injury should happen, our claims and medical service professionals work to mitigate those losses and contain claims costs. So I'd like to take a moment to discuss the department that I oversee, which is engineering or loss control. The services we offer to NJM business policyholders to help prevent those injuries from occurring. Business owners who take a proactive approach to workplace safety are much less likely to incur the frequency or amount of workers' comp claims as those who don't. I manage 11 certified loss prevention representatives who help companies we insure to identify, correct, and prevent safety problems with the goal to reduce on-the-job injuries. We perform regular underwriting evaluations for prospective policyholders and have a robust library of streaming training videos, safety posters, and brochures that for use by our current policyholders. All this is provided at no additional charge to our policyholders. NJM's passion for safety and service is what I believe sets our company apart in our history, in our industry. So with that, we are fortunate to have as our subject expert this morning, Rachel Klein-Pintori. Rachel is the Senior Procurement Specialist and VA Certified CVE Counselor at the New Jersey Institute of Technology. In this capacity, she gives presentations and seminars across the state with the goal of helping New Jersey businesses. Rachel received her BA in anthropology from Montclair State University and was accepted into the part-time PhD program at Columbia. She also graduated from the preparatory division of the Manhattan School of Music, and I'm told she plays a mean set of spoons. Unfortunately, I don't think there will be time today for a demonstration. So with that, now here is Rachel Klein-Pinturi.
Good morning, everybody. Hope all is well. I'm going to share my screen and slides. And if you really, really want, I will share myself. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Thumbs up would be great for anybody
Yes.
who's on video. Thank you. The Procurement Technical Assistance Centers are a great resource for selling to primes, federal, state, and local government agencies. The reason for this is that we are grant-based. We're funded by the Department of Defense through the Defense Logistics Agency in a cooperative agreement with NJIT. We've been at that campus for 36 years, and the reason we're one of the older models and one of the older PTACs is because they used to do it based on an ROTC funding objective, and they used to use us in the summer times to fill classrooms and teach. Clearly, between 36 years ago and now, times have changed. We're able to do most of this remotely. So we're still one of the dinosaurs in the industry. We are also the best kept secret in New Jersey because of our funding originally from the DoD. One of the unallowable costs was for advertising. So it was a catch-22. We weren't allowed to advertise ourselves. That too changed last year, but there was no plus up money, which means extra funding. So we are still the best kept secret in New Jersey. So for those of you who have not met me in my outreach efforts or through the VA, one of the things that I like to say is that I was Rachel Klein for a very long time in my life. No, I'm not related to Calvin, and I got tired of saying that. When I was going to marry my husband, my middle initial is I, so it would have been RIP. I decided I was not that fatalistic, so I decided to hyphenate. It had nothing to do with me being a modern woman, although I like to think of myself that way. Over the past couple of years, we've been able to get over $3 billion awarded to New Jersey PTAC clients. A lot of that is federal, but we've also now moved into the state and some of the counties. For the first time ever, New Jersey has started set-asides for 4 counties, and the state is now attempting to do set-asides for small business enterprises. And so the counties are Bergen, Essex, Hudson, and Mercer, but we hope all of the counties will move forward in that direction just to help our small businesses, because right now you have to sort of get on a vendor contract, and it's a GWAC, which means, for example, office supplies are done through Staples or Office Depot. So a lot of the smaller mom and pop office supply stores ended up closing. So I think they finally dawned on the state, and I'm not dishing the state. I love living here. I even love paying the taxes, believe it or not. So one of the things now is that they've realized small businesses can be a huge factor in bringing up the economy of the state. So what we do, we provide technical assistance. So we won't exactly hold your hand. We're not SBA. but we will provide you guidance going through the entire procurement process. I like to say A to Z, but more specifically, these are the services and resources. So we do one-on-one counseling. We do proposal, solicitation assistance, and reviews. We do guidance with your market research and help you do targeted marketing. What people don't know is that in the commercial world, sometimes a handshake will do for a contract, but on the federal side, you have to sort of start to learn a new language. It takes a little while to get there, but we help you target who is actually looking to buy your goods and services, and we'll give you a great knowledge base, all for free, that you can take advantage so that you can move forward to doing those contracts. The capability statements, we have templates and we will read through and make corrections. And those are basically your business resumes. It's usually one page and it's a synopsis of your past performance, what you're capable of doing, and it tells them if you're registered in Dun & Bradstreet, in SAM, which is the only registration you need to do business with the government, and what your NAICS codes are. And the NAICS codes are the North American Industry Classification Codes. Yes, there's a lot of acronyms, but what it does is it gives a general overview of what goods or services the government can buy from you. And it's produced by the Census Bureau. So the census is still working off of the 2010 numbers, even though it says 2017 in the Census Bureau. So for example, when you type in PPE or personal protective equipment, nothing really comes up. When you type in masks, especially during COVID, all you get is gas masks. So they haven't quite caught up. The other thing is we teach you about the government buying processes, who the subcontractors are going to be, who the primes are, who's doing business with the government. And again, what sub-agencies are doing business or requesting business in your field. We also have an electronic bid match. We pay for it with our grant money and provide to our clients for free. And what it does is it calls your keywords and drops them into your email every day. So you don't have to pay for these services or go crazy looking for solicitations every day. It gets dropped into your email. So that's a helpful tool. Not the end all, but helpful. We can also show you GSA schedules. We can help you and walk through SAM and some of the other vendor registrations. I always caution people, you can start with these things, but don't go down that rabbit hole all the time. Otherwise, all you'll be doing is certifications and registrations and not actually learning how to respond to solicitations. And once you're registered in SAM, you're already listed as a small business, and that's the first set aside category in the federal government. The Dynamic Small Business Search is an SBA database, and that's where contracting officers look for small businesses in your field and area. And what they've done is they've made it a separate sign-on. It used to be part of the old ORCA and CCR, for those of you who have been around for a while, but it's now not incorporated completely into SAM, so you do have to do that separate and aside. We teach you about government regulations, the FAR, DFAR, VAR, and CFR, again, acronyms, Federal Acquisition Regulations, Defense Federal Acquisition Regulations, Veterans Acquisition Regulations, and the Code of Federal Regulations, which is an SBA. And they have a lot of regulations. So those are sort of the standalones. We also, again, help you with the certifications and verifications. We do the VA verification. And for those of you who are service disabled, veteran-owned small businesses, you can get a state and federal certification. But on the federal side, the VA tries to set aside contracts that are equivalent to the service disabled, veteran-owned, homeless rate. So they've made a real effort to do that. The rest of the federal government does a 3% set aside. And then for the woman-owned, Hub Zone, and 8A programs, obviously that got lobbed off. There's also set-asides and sole source, but those are federal certifications and they require a fair amount of work. So that's why I hesitate to throw everybody in that direction right away. And we also help with DCAA, WAWF, and CMMC. The CMMC training is now the cybersecurity training. Most of you who have a very small business who use the AT&T and Verizons of the world, they're the ones that actually have to do most of the coverage, but you should be aware of it so that if you travel overseas and you take your phone with you, you can get in trouble because it may be considered unclassified information in a foreign country. So, you know, we give you sort of the heads up and the rules and regulations for watching that. And it doesn't hurt anyway to know about them, even if you choose not to do the government contracting, because you don't want anybody to be able to steal the data from your company, especially. You've worked hard for it, you want to keep it. The DCAA is the Defense Contracting Audit Association. It's how you set up your books. And my background is small business. And one of the things I had to do during the whole setup was the accounting portion of it. It's not something we teach, but it's something we're aware of, certainly. And wide area workflow is how the federal government pays you. And that's going to be sort of the biggest piece of it all. The one thing about the federal government is they've written into law two rules. One is that they have to pay you within 30 days of completion. And number two, there are still contracts that have a quick pay law, which guarantees payment within 15 days. And a lot of these are done through the wide area workflow network. So we teach you how to get on there, we give you training so that you can input the data. It goes to everybody electronically, they all sign off on it and you get paid. So it's not a, you know, you would never have to put in an accounts receivable clerk. You could have them do something else when you worked for the federal government. And we also have virtual and on-demand training, seminars, and webinars. We know that you guys have to work for a living and that it's your business. So we also provide the on-demand training for off hours after we've done a live event. And I think that's particularly helpful. This is the client criteria. You have to be a New Jersey-based business. And I'm just going to say one caveat, everyone but Union County. Union County, many, many years ago, decided to split from the statewide. Still don't know why, don't understand it, and I've left it alone. You have to be established for at least 2 years and have good capital and a good client base. Now, the reason for that is very simplistic. Even though the government pays you quickly, you have to outlay your own capital at first. So the assumption is if you've gotten a client base and you've done some commercial contracts, you do have some capital to work with. And that makes it a lot easier than trying to find funding after you've won a contract. That can get you into all kinds of trouble. You also have to have a good past performance history. And basically what that means is references. The government has to be able to call up if they don't know you as a vendor and say, you know, did this person do the job and do it adequately? You also cannot be delinquent on taxes and be of good moral character. What that means is you can't have not paid child support or things like that. So they ask those questions in SAM. And those are things that you have to answer for. And they haven't changed that yet. So that's what they expect. You have to be credit worthy because there are times when you are going to need to extend it a little bit in order to finish a contract if you're going to grow your company. And if you can't outlay the capital for a large contract, there is always a county contract, a state contract, or a subcontract that you can go after. And the county ones and the state ones are a pay as you go. So that will certainly help you build up to the federal. And I would just not jump into the federal unless you're really ready and aware of what you need to do. Business bank account, we say that sort of common sense, but it's turned out not to be as common as I thought it was. And you have to be careful if you set up the bank account many years ago. And for example, if you're a woman-owned small business and you go in with a partner who's a male, the banks used to tend to put the men first on the signature card, and that could get you kicked out of one of these programs. So it's, all eyes everywhere. You have to make sure you own and control your company completely. Computer literacy can help, mainly because with the federal government, everything is done online. You can set up meetings with real people in real locations, but especially since the pandemic, it's been virtual meetings. So you really have to have sort of a base for computer literacy. It doesn't necessarily have to be you. It can be somebody else in the company. I have a World War II vet whose daughter-in-law does all the computer information, but he's highly successful. So again, it's somebody within the company. And then a company website and email is preferred. We get a lot of Gmails and post office boxes, and the government really wants to know where you are. Not really, they will find you. So you need to put your physical address. They don't care if you work from home. They understand that concept. But they want to be able to research your company, and by creating a website and putting government capability page on there, you've narrowed down your acceptable vendor choices. We have our main office location is in Newark at the NJIT University. Right across from us is Rutgers Newark. And our satellite offices are located in Atlantic City and Camden. We do have to cover 20 of the 21 counties. So we go completely north to completely south. So I'm going to leave my contact page up there. I know I went through it quickly, and if there's a lot of questions, I can answer it. If not, I can keep going and give you some information. It's up to you guys whether you reach out or not. This is our general email box. If you can't remember me, these are the rest of us. And this is how you would sign up for services. It is an online service, but if you're not comfortable, you can just contact me and I'll get you into the system. That's easy enough to do. So with that, are there any questions? And if not, I will continue to talk. I'm quite good at it.
Hey, Rachel, this is Ray.
Hi, Ray.
Hi, let me cut in for a couple minutes with just a few questions based on the information you've shown us so far. So somebody looking at this, especially for the first time, it can be a pretty daunting map of acronyms and agencies and requirements and everything. So first question, I have two questions to get started with. First is, are there particular kinds of businesses that the government is looking for, or, particular kinds of either services or products that the government is looking for more readily than others?
No, actually, that would be a misnomer. They are looking for every kind of product and every kind of service. As a matter of fact, the Department of Defense is the largest buyer within the United States, and they spend the most money on goods and services within the United States. So, yeah, everything and anything you do. Now, mind you, they don't love jack of all trades. They want somebody who cares about their business, who does a good job. I like to think of it just as, for those of you who have had older cars in your life, if you think about the fact that when you find a mechanic that you trust and adore, you will do anything in the world to make sure that mechanic gives you the advice and takes care of the car the way you need. Federal government sort of sees you as the mechanic. They want to bring it to somebody they trust, that they know is going to do a good job, that cares about the business, and that cares about succeeding in the contract.
Okay. So with that as an answer, then I would presume then those folks who've joined us today are all eligible for this program based on no matter what their business is, what their products or services may be. So if that's the case, based on the scenario you laid out for us, what's the first step they would take?
Good question. The first step for us is to sign up with the PTAC, and then we will look over and talk to each individual client, find out what they do. And then we'll do some research. What agencies are looking for their products? What kinds of products do they have? Is this somebody that should be going after small business innovative research? Is this a manufacturing company that has a unique product? We look, through the information provided, and then we make recommendations. If there isn't enough capital, we suggest a different path, but everybody gets an individualized counseling and direction. So step one is contacting us and signing us up. Doesn't mean we won't pass you to the small business development or SCORE or the, chamber events or any other recommendation, but it's certainly a good place to start because our grant money doesn't change if we meet certain goals or certain certifications. We get paid the same amount of money all the time. So we always end up being quite truthful about everything.
So to sign up as a client, that's the information in the middle of this particular slide that's up right now, right?
Correct. And just because somebody is if you don't know any of the procurement people, you're more than welcome to just send a general email to ptech@njit.edu. It's pretty easy to remember. And then we have people checking that email daily.
And what we'll do is at the end of the presentation here, when our webinar is over, we will make your slide here and your contact information available to all the people who are on the webinar here today. Next question I'd like to ask, to just review some of the other materials that you've gone over, is the first slide you put up showed a figure of $3 billion having been awarded. Over what time frame is that?
Actually, that's only over the last couple of years. It's been much more than that over the 36 years. I'm always trying to change it and update it on the slides, but a lot of people have my older slides. I've been doing this for a while. It's this year alone with our businesses, it's been over $900 million so far. So this was an exceptional year. And I think part of it was COVID and the overspend, but it's not completely uncommon. And some businesses obviously are much more successful than others in the state, but we also account for subcontracts. So those that have done work for the MTA or the Port Authority or New Jersey Transit, those come up as well.
Okay, and so obviously it's a very lucrative market for these small businesses if they penetrate it.
If they're willing to put in the work, then yes, it's definitely, and I always say keep a foot in both worlds, because when in 2009, I don't know if many of you remember, but there was the sequestration in the federal government. Those that had commercial contracts did well because they were able to shift their market. And during the pandemic, those that were all commercial suffered, but those that had foot in
Rachel, you've gone into mute.
Sorry about that. I'm not sure where I left off, but I was going to say during the pandemic, those that suffered in the small businesses in the commercial world, those that were doing government contracts did really well because the government was flush with money and they were looking for everything. Okay. So definitely a foot in both worlds.
All right. And one of the phrases you used in this, and your last answer was, if they're willing to put in the work.
Yes.
So my next question was going to be, assuming that they take the first couple of steps and get going, what kind of time frame are we looking at from the time they say, okay, I want to do this, to when they might actually get some contracts and or at least consideration for contracts?
Yeah, again, another good question. It does take a while, and I've been doing it long enough so that I've seen, for example, I have a photographer who also frames his work. And within 3 weeks of getting his SAM and verification, he got a $300,000 contract. That's very unusual, but I'm not saying it's unheard of. And I've had people who do it part-time, they're micro businesses. It's a mom and pop. And so they can't do it full time because they're running their business day to day. Those can take a year or two to get through the whole process. And then they start out with smaller contracts. The average time frame working on it full time or having a staff member working on it full time is about 8 months.
Okay. And one of our participants has asked if screen 4 could get put up again. So I was wondering if you could put screen 4 back up and as soon as you do that, I have one other question to follow up. Okay, and while that's up, I have one other question to follow up on. So based on that, let me ask you this. What are the most common mistakes that companies will make when they're getting into this process? What is it you can tell us right now they should avoid?
There's a top 10 list, but I'm not going to do the top 10. The first one is not doing your due diligence. You're supposed to be responsible, responsive, and reliable. And people sort of drop off. If things get too hard, they don't do their due diligence. And I think that applies to everything, to be quite honest. That would be the number one mistake. The other one is not reading what you're going to be responsible for completely, because you can't sort of do the plausible deniability. It's the same thing when you speed. You get a ticket. You can say, oh, I'm sorry, didn't realize, didn't know, doesn't matter, you still get a ticket. Same thing with the federal government. If you didn't know, you didn't see it, you're still going to get penalized. So you have to be very careful about what you read and what you're responsible for. But again, I think that applies to everything that you put your name on.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm just curious about one other thing, but I did get one or two questions in from our participants, which I'll get to in a moment. But just one other question, especially on the federal government side. So is there a difference in how the federal government responds to these in an election year, such as next year, or a presidential election year, as they might in other years?
That's an interesting question. That's the first time somebody's ever asked me that. So that was a good question. No, it all is based on the National Defense Authorization Act. And if it gets passed, everything that's included in that holds true for every year that it gets passed. So it doesn't matter who's in office. Now, sometimes there's what they call plus up money, where they say, okay, during Trump, he said, we need masks. So there was plus up money during that period. Biden said, okay, everybody needs to be vaccinated. There was plus up money for vaccines. So, within that NDIA, there's always a certain amount of money, and it has to be spent. If it doesn't get spent by an agency, it goes back to the federal government. So every agency will spend. So the Air Force a couple of times have had an industry day where they have, say, $200,000, $100,000 left. And they've actually said, this is what we need. This is an idea that we want. One of the years was not having to use fossil fuels driving back and forth, or generals back and forth between the airfields. So, or dropping off packages. So they were looking for drone ideas and things like that. And so they gave out the $200,000 in that day as contract. So, they look to spend their money. They don't want to save the money. They want to save the government money, and will accept unique ideas for that. But overall, they have to spend everything that they get.
Okay. I have one question that's come in from one of our participants here. I'm going to read it pretty much verbatim because I'm not exactly sure some of the things she's referencing here. They're probably acronyms that hopefully you'll recognize. But her question is that she gets a big math, M-A-T-H, sent to her email address every day. And I'm not sure exactly what that is, but she says it's very long and a very broad list. Wondering if she can find Prime, P-R-I-M-E, in order to work with them. Do you understand what she's asking there?
Yeah, basically.
Could you explain the question a little bit first before you give it?
Yeah, what happens is a lot of the programs, including SAM, use very specific keywords to find those solicitations that are appropriate.
And what is SAM?
System for Award Management. It's the only registration tool you will need to do business with the federal government, but it is also where you do searches for awards, contracts, and so on, so that you can do research on a contract that you may be interested in and how much it was awarded for last year, so you know if your pricing is online. There's all kinds of great marketing tools that you can use. But the bottom line is, if you set up any kind of search tool, a lot of what happens is people put in their broad industry keywords, and it'll pull from the entire military spectrum. So, for example, I had an ESL teacher, English second language, and she said, it doesn't matter what language, I can teach them English. I said, well, what about just doing it in the state of New Jersey? No, I can do it anywhere. So I put ESL teacher, and I got a phone call saying, I don't want to teach Afghanistans how to speak English in Afghanistan. And I sort of went, well, so anytime you are thinking about doing federal contracts, you have to sort of narrow it down to something very specific. It can be multi-keywords, but yeah, that's what they need to do. And the long list, it shouldn't be that long. It should be very targeted. So there's something going on with the keyword search.
So that gets back to your early comment about doing your due diligence and knowing what it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely, okay. Ray.
All right, I have another question here from one of our participants. So I believe he must own based on the question, he must own a micro business. So you probably get this asked of you frequently. What's the level of help we can get for a proposal and a write-up response for an RFP? As a micro business, it's very hard to comply with all of the requirements in the time and manner required, given you have to run the business as well.
Right, and that's where the truth has to come out. The truth is, micro businesses will do better in a subcontracting space, or finding a mentor, or finding a prime, or stick to growing their micro business into a small business with more than one person. The government really hesitates to do business with a one-person company, and the main reason is, if you really think about it, what happens when you get sick? If you're in the middle of a contract that the federal government needs, what are you going to do? You really need to have somebody else in that business, which means ultimately you should remember you're not quite there. Remember I said you have to be credit worthy and have, sort of a business clientele base and capital, and micro businesses aren't quite there. Micro businesses, again, should be thinking about subcontracting and going after smaller contracts, but they're going to have to read them and learn how to ask questions about them. I'm perfectly happy to go over a county requirement that's 30 or 40 pages and go over any of the questions. But if I'm going to spend my time reading it, I want to make sure that the clients read it first. It's not my job to do that business for them. I can give them, pitfalls, and I can give them warnings, but I can't be responsible for their proposals or their solicitations.
Okay. One other follow-up I have then is, would it be true to say, or would it be fair to say, that after you've done this once or twice and you're in the system, and maybe and you're lucky enough and you do get awarded a contract or whatever, is it easier the second, third, the fourth times as you're doing these things?
Yeah, you'll discover that you're responsible for far less clauses within your field. So again, if your field is manufacturing and you're doing CAD drawings and, there's very specific kinds of things that you're doing, you'll start to recognize which FAR clauses apply to your business and which ones don't. And so it'll be easier to read them. Now, having said that, a lot of people lower their price to get their first contract, and that is the biggest mistake you can make, because within the contract and within the agreement is that you have to hold your prices for 1 year. So if you're losing money to get a government contract, you've just sunk your business, and that's not what you want to do. And the government isn't doing this to make you lose money. They want you to be successful. They want small businesses within the United States, or that do manufacturing within the United States, to continue to succeed. We've lost way too many manufacturing jobs and New Jersey jobs out, into the world, and that seems so silly. So they've put some stops in place now going forward to help with that.
Okay. Based on a question I just got from one of our participants, let's go back to the subcontract for a moment.
Mhm.
So essentially, the question is, given what you said, a micro, some of the obstacles that a micro business might run into in trying to do this, what does a micro business do? How does it get subcontracts? What should a micro business really focus on to do that?
Okay, so there's one way that's a good way. And for example, if you do any kind of mobile service or IT or something along those lines, Verizon or PSE&G or some of these very large companies do federal government work. And therefore, by law, they have to set aside a certain percentage. Now, they get to decide what percentage to small businesses. So I would then find out what the diversity spend is, what the small business liaison officer is within those large commercial companies that do business with the federal government. Now, remember, a small business within the federal government, if it's aircraft manufacturing, it's 1,250 people. It's not a revenue based. So somebody who may think a 500-person, aircraft company is large, federal government doesn't see that way. It's still a small business. Construction is 33.6 million memorialized over 3 years based on the NAICS code. So if you make more than that, and a lot of construction companies do, because if they rent one of these backhoes, they're going to blow their size within a couple of years. So there's things that have to be done in order to maintain your small size or become large and then do the subcontracting piece. But it depends on what your field is. You should know what large companies are in your field. And if you don't, do your due diligence, do the research. If it's a clothing industry, look at the big giants that do clothing. Military buys clothing, troop support out of Philadelphia, they buy everything. They even buy buttons.
Okay. I have one more follow-up from the first question about the prime suppliers.
Mhm.
The question is, how can I find those prime suppliers so that our business can become a second-tier supplier? Why don't you explain that scenario?
Okay.
Before you answer the question?
So a prime who does business with the government hires tier 1 subcontractors. Tier 1 subcontractors have to abide by all the federal rules and regulations, and they can do up to 40% of a contract. Tier 2 don't get recognized by the government, don't have any real rights, probably don't even know the name of the real contract, and are probably working for the tier 1 subcontractor. So again, look for the prime that's in your field. And you should know them better than me because I don't know every field or every large company. And then start researching the company. Go to an event that they're having if it's an open event, just keep asking a lot of questions. Don't assume a simple, I'd like to introduce my company is going to be anything but a spam note, in their email. It's not going to reach them. You have to actually understand who you're trying to reach and why.
Okay. Next question has come in. Does industry past performance help if we're still trying to get our first or second government contract?
Yeah, that another great question. Yes, they're allowed to consider commercially equal experience, and that's a direct quote. So if you're going after a federal contract and you've done 2 or 3 of these contracts that are similar enough, and you get a good reference from them, you will be considered for a federal contract. And that's the best way to jump in some ways. It's that catch-22 when you get out of college and they say, well, what kind of experience do you have? And you go, it's that same kind of, catch-22 at that point, which is why commercial success is important.
And so he had a follow-up question, which I think you've answered in the way that you just did, but they should get and they should be ready to use a letter of recommendation.
Yeah, actually, some agencies, it depends on what agency, and it is written in the clauses that you will have to read. And yes, they are boring. But it'll say past performance requested by phone in 24 hours or it'll say email references within 3 days. It'll give you a specific amount of time and what you need. But I would always have the point of contact and a letter of recommendation anyway, because if they don't respond within 24 hours, you can send it in and it might be accepted. So always have that sort of in your back pocket anyway.
Next question comes in based on the criteria slide that you put up before. I was going to ask this myself, actually, because one of your criteria is it must be a New Jersey-based business.
Yes.
How do you define that? There's one question here that says, the questioner asks that because their corporate office is in Virginia, but they just opened a building in New Jersey, can I submit for contract work in New Jersey based on the fact they have the address here?
Yes, you can submit for contract work anywhere. But if you think about pricing, so for example, if a New Jersey-based business wants to do contract work in Virginia, they're also going to include travel or hotel or the setting up of offices. So it goes in reverse. But if your headquarters are in Virginia, you can work with a Virginia PTAC and then get contracts in the state of New Jersey. But the PTACs only have so much grant money, so we keep it within our own territory. So wherever your HQ is, your headquarters, is where you would use a PTAC.
So they would not necessarily, they would not apply to New Jersey PTAC.
No, they would stay within the state of Virginia, but Virginia will also have the same kind of database that we do, and they will give them the same kinds of services. And since New Jersey is a very populous state, we have a lot of clients per counselor. So Virginia has regionals. So, if I was that company in Virginia, I would reach out first to the Virginia PTACs.
Okay. So then let's just go full circle on that question. So to be a New Jersey-based business, by the definition of your criteria, means what?
It means anybody who has a headquarters within the state of New Jersey, aside from Union County. So 20 of the 21 counties, as long as their headquarters are there. And again, the headquarters can be your home base, But if I look up your Dun & Bradstreet number, which is part of my research, and I see that you're not being truthful, that's strike one. Good moral character. Remember, that's part of the criteria.
Okay. I have a question here. I'm going to assume it's somebody from Union County based on the question, or at least quite curious about it. Can you please clarify what you said about Union County before? Do you not work with individuals living and working in Union County?
No, we don't. Union County is run by an economic development center, which has a slightly different model than us. And they are based in Kenilworth, I think. It's called the UCEDC. So anybody in Union County goes there. Union County kicks back anybody who's outside of Union County to us. So we cover 95% of the state and state small businesses.
Okay. All right. That's the list of most of the questions. We're at about 9:50 now. So do you have some other points you'd like to make in closing out?
Again, just the due diligence, and I want to thank you guys for allowing me to speak. I appreciate it. I love sharing what I do. I love what I do. I love to help clients. I definitely work a lot of hours in responding and reading solicitations for clients. And I try to be as open and honest as I can, but I think it really comes down to due diligence. I know it's easy to get a commercial contract, but I always think it can be incredibly helpful while you're waiting or calling on the dollars from a local contract. You could be getting the money from a federal contract at the same time. So keep a foot in both worlds. Do your due diligence, work hard, and reach out to anybody that can help. All of your chambers, your organizations, Najabos, WeBank, whoever it is you can reach out to, ask for help. Either people can help or they can't.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask for help right now by asking you to put the contact screen up one more time.
Sure.
If you would. And so everybody can get a look at that, and we will also make this available. As I said earlier, we'll make this available to all of the participants afterwards, so they have all this information as well.
Yeah, and if they're not sure they're ready, they can always email a question to me and I will respond, you're crazy, or that's wonderful. I'm joking. Most of the time. Most
Very
of the
good.
time.
All right. Thank you, Rachel, for this information and for your time today. We appreciate it very much. To Clancy, thank you to NJM Insurance Group again, and for Jim for joining us as well today. We have one more in this series that we'll be doing in about a month or so, and you'll start to hear some information about that soon. So thank you to everybody for joining us today. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.